I've left the clamps in place overnight, so that's a good 12 hours. And now I can take them off, and I should find this is nicely glued. So there's our board glued. And what I like to do at this stage is I actually like to check the joint by just running my chisel across like this, a gouge, and you can see that's a very tidy joint. Slight colour change, but that should sort out, and certainly this is going to be coloured and stained and whatever anyway, so that's a very nice corner, nice joint rather. So here is my work, and I'm going to now put the snail drawing exactly on here. Now either you can use carbon paper, or on a softwood you can actually push through the drawing and see a mark, so you can mark directly on the wood, or you can do what I'm going to do now, which is to use a spray-on adhesive and just spray that and glue the drawing down. There you go, that's the drawing now glued onto the wood. So the next job is to bandsaw this out, and you can see from these red lines I've made here that you really want to give an extra bit of waste wood around. Don't cut right up to the edge, give it a bit of waste wood, especially around here, around these antennae here. They're quite fragile, quite small, we need plenty of wood. In fact, we might even make them that big. So lots of wood around there. And I'm going to run the bandsaw around this. If you don't have a bandsaw, then there are various ways on this site. I'll make a note below of cutting out this profile, one of which consists of cutting verticals like this and then chiseling it out. So you cut through like so up to the line and chop this out. But for me, I'm off to the bandsaw, and then it'll start looking like a snail. Back from the bandsaw, and doesn't it look wonderfully different, much more like a snail. This is the sort of orientation it's going to be, and the grain of the wood is along here, like this. When I bandsawed it out, I drilled through here, this bit, so that I was able to cut into it more easily. So I made a border hole there first. This is quite an interesting carving in that there's a lot of perspective. So before we go any further, I think it's a good idea if we just pause and think about this design and how this is going to work as a form. A two-dimensional drawing like this is very good for cutting out the wood, but doesn't really help us when it comes to 3 dimensions. So what I've done here is I've made a little clay model. You can see here immediately several things, I think. One of which is that this eye stalk, this antennae at the front, is at the top level, whereas the one at the back is right against the back wall. So there's a big space in between here in this direction. You can also see that there's a sort of watershed going on where you have a front and a back, because if I turn this round like this, so you can see the side view, you can see that the front of the snail has to come down to the background here. It can't be sticking up in the air. So it's rising from the background, the shallowest part, up to some point here, like what I've called a watershed, and then it drops down here. And the same with the snail shell. So there's a whole plane that goes across here, changes, and then comes round the back. So here it is here. So what's happening in this relief carving is that the depth dimension is being compressed. A real snail shell like this is much more rounded. So what we're doing is effectively squashing it. But we've got to squash it in a certain way that it looks as if it's the perspective is here. So the things we can use this model to work out, and I think it's very good if you make something like this very briefly, is where your high spots will be. So over here there's a sort of high spot there, and it comes round this watershed and it'll be up this antennae here. So all this is sort of high And you can see there's a change of plane there and a change of plane there. And you can see how this must go in. This is not right, it's not going to stick up like that, it's actually going to be more parallel to the background. But all that, so you can see what sort of wood you need to remove. So make a little clay model like this and you can get a sense of where you're going with the form and how that will work. Before we start the carving proper, make sure you've got a copy of the drawing. We're going to be taking wood away, taking lines away, and this is a good thing to refer to as we go along. Also, clean up the back of the wood. This is now finished, and this is the best time to deal with it. So clean that up, and I'm going to use a carver's screw in the back of this wood and hold it to my tilting bench. So I've bored the hole ready for that there. Now that must be in the thickest part of the carving, and you'll work that out from your little clay model. You can't make the hole too deep or else it'll come through the other side, so be very careful about sighting that hole. If you don't have a carver's screw, then a simple lag bolt or coach bolt would do. It's particularly useful to be able to hold it like this because this end we can actually have hanging free off a post so that we can work this. It's quite three-dimensional. So sort all that out and then we're all ready to start our carving.